Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Only on the Progressive Soapbox. So I'm doing the show tonight. Tim had feelings about something I said earlier. You can watch my other video for context or for information on it. I think it's kind of ridiculous, so I won't necessarily go into it here. Doesn't matter. There's no bad blood or anything else. I'm going to do my show tonight at 8 p.m. 8:30 p.m. Well, 8:30. Well, it will be 8 p.m. under normal circumstances. Usually when I did the show on TBTV, it was 9 o'clock. So usually my schedule is at 9. It will be 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. I'm probably going to do interviews on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. I like that. I think that works. Yeah. Well, wife and I are kind of debating a schedule, thinking about a schedule for it. No, those are going to be added. You'll see what I mean. Those are things that are added in. Is audio and everything else okay, guys? I want to start that before. Oh, okay. People are telling me yes. Or at least my editors telling me yes, or campaign director, or whatever my wife is in this capacity. So I got a few stories I want to do tonight. I watched the news today and I put out a ton of content today because a lot of stuff was going on today. Everything from Donald Trump essentially segregating the military from transgenders, which is amazing that somebody would do that. Apparently it took Obama in 2016 to come out and say, yes, transgenders should be able to serve in the military. They're citizens of this country. They should be able to represent this country if they themselves want to represent this country. 1% of the country is in the military. We have 320 million people in this country, and 1% suit up. Now that's allowed somewhat of a discontinuity between the things that the military does and the things that the public does. Meaning the military can go out and do certain things, and those things don't necessarily affect the public because the people want to sign up for it. However, I think about those people being brainwashed. Those people did make a decision that they themselves wanted to represent the country to which they themselves were born. Whether I think they're being sent on wars of aggression or not, it's kind of besides the point in this case. You're literally segregating the military. The military itself said, nobody told us that Trump was going to make that tweet. Nobody told us. This was purely politics, going with this idea of the religious right. He has a religious zealot as a vice president. I'm talking about Mike Pence. He has denominations. You have all these Christians and religious groups that supported him. Hey, good job. We get to create segregation back in America. In this case, in this capacity, in the military. Nobody forced him to do it. He made a decision to do it. That's what happened today. An embarrassment. A straight embarrassment. And it was done on Twitter to add to the indignity of it all. A reality show president, Donald Trump. Only thing Democrats can talk about is Russia. Now, and they're trying to save healthcare. The first story, this kind of leads into my first story. Let's see if I can do this right. Bernie Sanders. Look at him. Look at the look in his eye. Bernie Sanders. You know I love the guy. Love him to death. But I will rail against him right now. And people have feelings about me railing against him. You can have feelings about me railing against him. The House passed sanctions against Russia today. They passed sanctions against Russia. Why would they pass sanctions against Russia is the interesting question. Overwhelmingly, purely because of Russian hacking. Russia shouldn't have been meddling in our elections, is what they said. And they waved their fists and everything else. And the United States House of Representatives on Tuesday was worsening the already poor relations between the two countries. The bill drawn up largely in response to Moscow's alleged. I'm glad that they use alleged. Good job, CNN, on that. Meddling in the 2016 U.S. elections calls for new measures against Russia, North Korea, and let's also add in Iran. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're passing a sanctions bill on a Russian hack that never took place. and that you don't have evidence for. At the very least, you don't have direct evidence tying Russia to what you're saying that they were doing, and yet you're passing a goddamn bill and you're adding in 2 other countries to boot. You're an embarrassment. House of Representatives, my ass. You're not representing anybody. It also limits any effort by the White House to weaken such penalties. Now, if it's veto-proof, meaning if it goes to the Senate and if it's a veto-proof majority, Donald Trump can't do anything about it. They're trying to effectively neuter the office of the presidency. That's amazing. That's amazing. The EU has previously coordinated with the United States over sanctions in response to Russia's annexation of the Crimea from the Ukraine, but it fears the latest measure could hit companies that are involved in financing a controversial new pipeline. Oh, so sad about your pipeline. I'm so sad about your pipeline. These guys are putting sanctions on a nuclear nation and adding in 2 other nations to boot, fomenting tensions in those nations. Mind you, again, wars of aggression that we ourselves are doing. Nobody's forcing us to do this. They have no evidence that Russia hacked those elections. If anything, those things was a leak. And I'm even going to that part. Juncker said the bill could have unintended unilateral effects on EU's energy security. This is why the Commission concluded today that if concerns are not taken into account sufficiently, we stand ready to act appropriately within a matter of days. America first cannot mean that Europe interests come last. Good job, Juncker. That's called growing a spine. Good job. Stop being a lapdog of the United States. If the United States is doing something that's adversely affecting your interests, stand up to the United States. You let the United States murder civilians abroad wholesale. You don't say squat. They talking about sanctions on Russia. Oh, dude, you're going to hurt our energy interests. We have to talk about this. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yes, I'm glad that you're saying something about this. Yes, I'm glad that you're actually pushing back on this. It's a little bothersome that your pushback is not that they're doing sanctions on Russia or North Korea or even, what's the other country for that matter? Iran for that matter. Your issue is you're going to affect our energy policy. You understand that the United States is fomenting a war with a nuclear power nation. Do you also understand that China is probably going to be a part of this war, meaning China and Russia are going to be allied in that combat? Do you also understand that they're adding Iran into that mix, meaning they're trying to foment some kind of destabilization of the region in Iran in the same way they're fomenting the same destabilization in Syria and Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan? You can name one country after the next. The United States' forces all across Africa. At least they did under Obama. I have a hard time believing he's not doing the same thing under Trump. Germany, which strongly backs the new pipeline, said it was concerned over sanctions. It would be unacceptable for the United States to use possible sanctions as an instrument to serve the interests of U.S. industry policies, Foreign Minister Martin Schaefer said Wednesday. France called the bill unlawful due to its extraterritorial reach. We've been killing civilians in one country after the next. The Constitution does not allow the president to function as a king and go anywhere that he wants to and murder civilians. That's extra-constitutional or extraterritorial reach. But because of a pipeline, you guys are coming out now and bitching about it? Are you shitting me? This is amazing to me that this is what we have as a world government in a sense. Meaning these other countries and the interests of these other countries. Meaning we're okay with the United States doing anything it wants to do. But don't touch our energy. Have that the rest of the world. Yes, we would drag some African dictator to the Hague when they're doing something that we don't particularly like. But no, George Bush can kill 1 million people and we'll let him walk. It's amazing to me. These countries are embarrassing. You all are embarrassing. I'm talking about all of you. You guys are embarrassing. You guys grow a spine when it comes to our energy policies. I wish I could do a British accent, but I don't do a good British accent. I'm bitching. I'm sorry. It annoys me. It just annoys me. They're fomenting a war with a nuclear nation. That's what's taking place. When we're shooting down jets, and we're in their country, you understand that, right? We have forces thousands and thousands of miles away in conflicts that have nothing to do with us. At this point, they're trying to pull sanctions, and these countries are saying, look, you're adversely affecting our interests. We're no longer allowed with you adversely affecting our interests. I'm glad they're saying it, yes. It just sucks they don't necessarily take the stance when it comes to actual lives that we've been taking. France called the bill unlawful due to its extraterritorial reach, saying it could impact Europeans if enacted. We have challenged similar texts in the past, the Foreign Ministry said in a statement. To protect ourselves against the extraterritorial effect of U.S. legislation, we would have to work on adjusting our French and European laws. Here's the thing. This came out yesterday. U.S. intelligence veterans believe the Russian hack of the DNC computers may have been an inside job. Series of professionals early on, Julian Assange had made the point, Russia didn't give me this information. Russia didn't give me this information. The mainstream news completely ignored the fact that Julian Assange said Russia didn't give me this information. You had talking heads, even on YouTube, would say, well, Julian Assange had a dog in his hunt. Julian Assange doesn't have a dog in his hunt. All of these people in the Democratic Party and the mainstream news have a dog in the hunt. Julian Assange doesn't. Julian Assange has never lied. Julian Assange can't lie in this sense. Otherwise, it's going to mar the reputation of his agency, which they want to attack any way they possibly can. So no, he's not going to lie in that case. So yes, I believe him over that. And then this. U.S. intelligence veterans believe the Russian hack of DNC computers may have been an inside job. Let's read it. I've read it yesterday, but let's read it again. Memorandum for the President. From Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Something that's sorely missing. Subject. Was the Russian hack an inside job? Forensic studies of the Russian hack into the Democratic National Committee computers last year reveal that on July 5th, 2016, data was leaked, not hacked, by a person with physical access to the DNC computers, and then doctored to incriminate Russia. That's mind-blowing. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And it makes perfect sense. Now, let's see what the document says in regards to how does the document know this? How do these professionals, these people who do this, how do they know this? After examining metadata from the Guccifer 2.0 July 5th, 2016 intrusion into the DNC server, independent cyber investigators have concluded that an insider copied DNC data onto an external storage device, and the telltale signs implicating Russia were then inserted. Key among the findings of the independent forensic investigations is the conclusion that the DNC data was copied onto a storage device at a speed that far exceeds an internet capability for a remote hack. That's key to the understanding of what's taking place. They're saying there is no way somebody could remote into a computer and download information that fast. The speeds has to be done on site. It has to be done on site. Of equal importance, the forensics show that copying and doctoring were performed on the east coast of the United States, not Russia. It wasn't Russia. Mainstream news is lying. When Jake Tapper, Chuck Todd, when all those people get up there, those talking heads, those polished, shiny faces, when they get up there and they say that, and they say these things, these provocative things that put us versus them, they're lying to you. They're lying. Independent analyst Skip Foden, a retired IBM program manager for Information Technology US, who examined the recent forensic findings, is co-author of this memorandum. He has drafted a more detailed technical report titled Cyber Forensic Investigation of Russian Hack and Missing Intelligence Community Disclaimers, and sent it to the offices of Special Counsel and Attorney General. VIPS member William Bimmy, a former technical director at the National Security Agency, and other senior NSA alumni and VIPs, attest to the professionalism of the independent forensic findings. So are these people also a Russian plant? These people who worked in the NSA, in the other agencies, are these people also a plant? New York Times. Well, this is truth today, but the New York Times retracts a Russian gate canard. You don't say. New York Times is pushing out fake news. No shit. The New York Times has finally admitted that one of the favorite Russian gate canards, that all 17 intelligence agencies concurred on the assessment of the Russian hacking of Democratic emails, is false. They lied. On Thursday, the Times appended a correction to the June 25th article that repeated the false claim, which has been used by Democrats in the mainstream media for months to brush aside any doubts about the foundation of the Russian gate scandal, to portray President Trump as delusional for doubting all 17 intelligence agencies. They lied. They lied. Let's keep going with this. So what does Bernie Sanders have to say? What is Bernie? Bernie's an upstanding guy. He's the guy that we voted for. He was the one who wanted a political revolution and wanted the things to change in this country, who wanted people to stand up for health care and stopping these wars where we're toppling governments and kicking over governments. What does Bernie Sanders have to say? What does the socialists have to say about this? Sanders' statement on Iran and Russian sanctions. I am strongly supportive of the sanctions on Russia included in this bill. It is unacceptable for Russia to interfere in our elections here in the United States or anywhere around the world. There must be consequences for such actions. That's laughable. I'm sorry, that's laughable. It assumes that it makes this amazing thing as if the people are completely unaware of the actions that the United States have taken abroad in regards to breaking into other people's systems, in regards to spying on every country across the planet, in regards to toppling governments. Even if you thought Russia hacked us, what do you think about toppling a government, destroying Iraq, destroying Libya, trying to undermine Syria? What is that? What is that? We've toppled one government after the next over the past 50, 60 years. It is amazing to me that somebody can say something like that with a straight face. It is absolutely amazing to me. And it hurts me deeply that it's Bernie Sanders. There must be consequences for such actions. Where are the consequences for the things that we do around the world, Sanders? Where are those consequences? Are you going to be completely this level of we've done no wrong, we're dandelions in a world full of, in a world full of bad guys? If you ask the countries around the world who's the biggest threat to world security, that's us. It's bothersome that you don't have presence of mind or honesty to say that, because certainly you know that. I also have deep concerns about the policies and activities of the Iranian government, especially their support for the brutal Assad regime in Syria. So now he's also talking about regime change to some degree. Why are you taking shots at Iran for supporting Assad when we're supporting Saudi Arabia as they're murdering millions of people? Do you understand that in their government they crucified a guy? They're chopping off heads. You're taking issue with them standing beside the Assad regime. I haven't heard you say shit about Saudi Arabia. I'm just missing this. I'm missing this level of honesty. That's all. I'm missing this level of honesty. This statement is done as if this particular country doesn't exist, and this particular country doesn't have a history, and this particular country is not currently doing things that are disgusting around the globe. And you're going to come out and say something like there has to be consequences for somebody else's actions. What about ours? What about ours? It's amazing to me that Bernie Sanders, the honest guy, the Colin Powell of the Democratic Party, that guy is making a statement like this that is essentially pushing forward on a war. Do you understand that? Yes, I'm being somewhat intense on this, because if you're putting sanctions on Russia for something that Russia didn't do, and the honest man in the room is saying, yes, I am completely for this, shouldn't you have evidence? Shouldn't you have evidence? Shouldn't you have something a little bit more than something from some CrowdStrike and 3 intelligence services that say it looks a little bit, when you have contrary evidence saying it's not the case, that the narrative that you guys have ran with over the past 7 months have been a lie, including you, Bernie Sanders. Yes, you've been lying. You've been lying. I have voted for sanctions on Iran in the past, and I believe they were an important tool for bringing Iran to the negotiating table. But I believe these sanctions could endanger the very important nuclear program. Do you understand that our relationship with Iran, what we have now, that nuclear deal that Obama passed, I was for that nuclear deal. Because what Obama understood was there are hawks in this particular government that is perfectly okay with either fomenting a war or trying to topple that particular government. The idea that Bernie Sanders will say anything about Iran on this. Where's the honest man? Where's the man with integrity? Where's the guy who stood up and said we need a political revolution? Where's the guy who's okay with being marginalized as a socialist in his Senate for year after year after year, with people looking down on him because of calling himself a socialist? Where's that guy? Where's that guy? Where's the guy when we need him to say this Russian nonsense is bullshit? And no, we shouldn't be putting sanctions on the Russian government when you can't necessarily prove that the Russian government hacked us. That's the guy I'm looking for. Where is that guy? This is amazing to me. This is absolutely amazing to me. Bernie Sanders. Warmonger. Warmonger. Call it what it is. If you're going to put sanctions on Russia, you are edging this country closer to war. Who put sanctions on us? Who put sanctions on us? We invaded a country and killed 1 million people. Who put sanctions on us? That's my question. That's my question. That's the question I want Bernie Sanders to answer. I wish I had his ass here for an interview, because I would love to ask him questions on what he believes that this country is, what he believes this country does, and what is the path, meaning the militaristic path of this country, the things that we do. Meaning, we have 17 intelligence agencies. Think about that. We are the most spied upon nation in regard to ourselves. We are the most clueless nation who doesn't regard its history, or for that matter, its current present. Honestly. Talks like this anger me. I'm sorry, it does. I'm in Aries moon. I'm sorry. I prefer honesty. I prefer honesty. There's nothing that you can do, meaning it is difficult to function. It's difficult to interact with people if you can't necessarily be honest about who you are. About who you are. This image of this country that these guys put out. We want to be nice and shiny. We want to talk about America purely in nice terms and act as if we do nothing in the world. Anything that we do, by definition, is correct because we're America. That is a bullshit image. That is the image that they put on mainstream media. That is the image that Bernie Sanders, right here, this is a political statement that he's playing. Certainly he knows the difference. Certainly he has to know. Well, I don't know if he has to know. Look, I don't know if he goes along with this because he's trying to go along with the Democrats. I don't know. But at this point, this is politics, and this is dangerous politics. You get to a point where things take a life of their own, where it's not one of these situations of this thing of backing away from it. The narrative itself forces the people in power to do certain things. You don't want to get to the point where the leaders in charge are essentially forced to do something because they've been following a ridiculous narrative. If you're going to say that Russia hacked us, then you should prove it. You haven't proved it. You haven't proved it. I don't care how much you talk about it. You haven't proved it. This is somewhat of a conspiracy theory that you guys have gone with. And that hole has just been blown through the conspiracy theory. And you've been backtracking one after another on that conspiracy theory. You have nothing. You have squat. And you guys have been talking about this for the past 8 months. I want to leave it. It just annoys the shit out of me. I have certain expectations of Bernie Sanders. I do. One of those expectations, I understood him going with this Democrat thing. Fair enough. I don't particularly like it, but I understood it. But this is different. Certainly understand this is different. They're talking about putting sanctions on a country for something that country didn't do. They're also talking about adding in Iran and North Korea for shits and giggles. That's what we're talking about. We're not the policemen of the world. You're spending $1 trillion murdering people overseas, and you can't even make sure that people have water in your country. This is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment. Bernie Sanders, you should be embarrassed by this message. That's the truth of it. Let's move on. I'm complaining and bitching at this point. Let's go to the next one. Mainstream media. Mainstream media. Don't you love mainstream media? Chuck Todd, Jake Tapper, Joy Reid. All of these polished people getting up there saying things for their particular channel. One after another putting out propaganda. This is what you need to believe. This is what you need to believe. They reiterate it over and over again for you. MSNBC will run the same message for, morning to night. Fox News will run the same narrative morning to night. CNN will run their bland same narrative morning to night. There will be minor variances in the way they tell those stories because they're trying to tilt those stories one way or another based upon the party who's there. So yes, Joy Reid is going to say something ridiculous in order to protect Hillary Clinton, and she may be lying through her teeth. Yes, Fox News is going to say something that may be completely ridiculous and be lying through their teeth. Where's truth? What is truth? Somebody writes an article. Is that article the reality of the situation, or is that person just trying to frame an article a particular way? I was watching Russia TV yesterday. They had Slajov Zizek. He's a Slovenian philosopher. I actually like the guy. Noam Chomsky hates him. It was propaganda. She was asking him questions about these. The woman was intensely asking questions, one question after another, trying to get across this point of the West has been destroying these territories, and the West needs to stop destroying these territories, and these uprisings, for the most part, are not good things. That's the point she was trying to make. She was trying to consistently get it. Zizek was trying to make this point about emancipatory violence. Understood his point. It just sounds funny for him to say emancipatory violence when you're having a political conversation. Her thing was, yeah, none of that. We need to stop having these countries being blown up in this way, and the West needs to stop doing it. That was her point. We've come to a weird place. We've come to a very bizarre place. It's almost like in the information age, truth was the first thing to take the bullet. You're inundated with such information that it's hard to necessarily nail yourself down on what's true. Ultimately, you're left with this level of ambiguity. Many times, you have to kind of look behind the story to kind of understand, okay, this is the narrative. There are elements in the story that may be true. What is this person trying to say? How do I get rid of what this person is trying to say and actually just get to what's going on in the story? That's where you find yourself. That's where you find yourself. Mainstream media has done an amazing disservice. It has. It's not going to care, but it should be ashamed of itself. For 6 months, it's been propping a narrative or pushing a narrative that Russia hacked us. Think of all the things that happen in your city. Think of all the things that happen in your state. Think of all the things that happen in your country. For that matter, in your world. Think of all those things. And in thinking of all those things, what's important? I'm trying to make a point. What's important? Sorry, I'm having weird technical stuff going in the background. The media looks out over the landscape. And as they look out over the landscape, they give a lens and say, okay, this is what we think you need to know. This is what's important. By virtue of the way they do that, it makes it seem as if these are the stories that matter. These are the things that are important. These are the things that need to be seen. But are those the things that need to be seen? What is the incentive structure of the media in this sense? The media is a for-profit enterprise. They would like to make profit on the things that they do, meaning they need to keep asses in seats. The stories that they give you are not necessarily news per se, or at least the very least news that allow you to understand your world, your government in a way that would allow you to make certain decisions. It doesn't care about that. In the same way that McDonald's doesn't necessarily care about nutrition, McDonald's wants to give you a really tasty hamburger. Don't give a shit what's in a hamburger. Yes, it could be 60% something else, 20% beef. We don't care. We just need to sell that goddamn hamburger. The goal is not to make a decent hamburger. The goal is to profit from it, meaning I just need the hamburger to taste good. Same thing with the news. They just need the news to taste good. Sound bites, little quibbits or little bits, little things that the person says. Everything turns on got yous and everything else. What is truth? What is truth? And if they're not going to give you a competing narrative to the Russia stuff that they've been talking about 6 months, if it comes out that they've been dead wrong about the Russia stuff for 6-7 months, they've been lying to their audience. There have been contrary evidence. They've been lying to their audience and pretending that the story is ironclad. The story is not ironclad. I just read about the intelligence report that came out. This is a bogus claim. This is a bogus claim. And part of the reason that they are talking about this sanction stuff now, and this war talk, is pushed by the media. Do we have weapons do we have weapons? Or did they have weapons in Iraq? Did they have weapons in Iraq? Who were the agencies that was pushing the story that they had weapons in Iraq? And did those newspapers, did those outlets, the people who were commissioned to actually get down to the details to figure out whether or not the state was being truthful? They failed on their job at a massive level, and you have 1 million people who died because they failed on their job. I'm making the point that they're failing again. They're failing again. People come on YouTube to get their news because they realize that what's taking place on mainstream news are liars. They're liars. They're paid to sell a particular narrative. They don't want anything to go beyond that narrative. And they, virtue of their mouthpiece, they would say, oh, that's debunked. That's conspiracy theory. That's their platform. They can say that. That's just the person saying it. There's no reality to them saying it. Fact is, when contrary evidence comes out for their particular statement and the mainstream media doesn't bring up the fact that there's contrary evidence coming out to blow their statement out the water, that's problematic. When those weapons, the sarin gas, everybody blamed the Syrian government. Nobody. Except one guy, Seymour Hersh. He actually did some investigation. What do you know? Somebody's doing reporting. They wouldn't even publish his report showing that it wasn't the Syrian government to drop the sarin. It was actually the rebels. They tried to put sanctions on the Syrian government. The reason why the Obama administration stopped just short of bombing Syria, it wasn't because he didn't necessarily have the votes to do it. Obama would have did it willy-nilly if he wanted to. He would say, I'm the president of the United States. I can go into any country and kill whoever I want. The problem was he realized that they couldn't necessarily tie that sarin gas to the Syrian government, and he stopped at the last minute. At least that's the story that Seymour Hersh gives. And yes, I believe Seymour Hersh. He has 40, 50 years of experience. The man is fucking awesome. The mainstream media never knew that. The mainstream media never talked about that. The mainstream media created a narrative, ran with that narrative. The Syrian government drops sarin gas. That is our mainstream media. Your mainstream media are failures. All of these networks are failures. They don't do the job that they're supposed to do. Media is supposed to inform the citizen so that citizen has some understanding of their particular world and they can interact with that world. The job of the media is not to make profit. The job of the media is to actually distribute the news. You're failing at your task. Your philosophical basis for existence, you're failing at it. You're failing at it miserably. You're doing an amazing disservice to this country. And once again, you're dragging this country into the direction of war. I've watched, they would scold Donald Trump on each and everything Donald Trump was doing. The one thing they loved Donald Trump on was when he launched missiles into Syria. He launched missiles into Syria when they said sarin gas was dropped. Nobody waited to figure out who the fuck actually did it. And the mainstream media, true to their ridiculousness, true to being failures that they are, their task, turned around and praised them for it. And after praising them for it, they still went with the narrative that Syria was the one that did it, when the evidence pointed to the Syrian rebels. Mainstream media. Mainstream media. They're embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. I can't stand to watch it. The people look like plastic to me, and oftentimes the context they give is stilted at best. All of these networks. All of them. They're acting like they have this kind of middle perspective. They don't have a middle perspective. They have a perspective that gives you stories that don't really get to the heart of the matter of what matters. They're hiding stuff, whether you know it or not. It's not, look, it's not just what people say, believe it or not. It's the things that they don't say. If you're not having the conversation about, hey, they're murdering people abroad, should we be in all those countries? If that conversation is not on the table, that's something that's not being said. That's something that you've essentially pulled the citizenry out from the conversation because it's not on the table. It's not talked about. It's not being discussed. Russia. The problem is Russia. That's the problem. You're inundated with news that doesn't matter. I'll give you another example. The income inequality thing. You have half the country in poverty. That's a big fucking deal. Think of the lives of those particular people who are living in those particular situations, and you're putting stuff on that has nothing to do with the lives that those people are living at all. Completely detached from what takes place in the actual world. Polished people in the ivory towers talking about stuff that ultimately doesn't matter. But at the same time, doing things that's pushing a narrative that could lead this country into a war. That is our media. That is our media. They should be embarrassed by themselves. They're not. They make a lot of money, so they're not embarrassed by themselves. They don't necessarily get it. I'm saying they're failing in their philosophical basis of existence, and they're doing a massive disservice to this country as they do it. The Russiagate thing is bullshit. It's nonsense. And they've been talking about it for 7 months. You've wasted 7 months of people's time on this nonsense. Good job. Good job. Let's talk about Tom Perez. Not specifically Tom Perez, but Tom Perez is going to be my representative for the DNC. I talked about the media on the last one, and there's a really interesting point with this that goes with Deborah Wasserman-Schultz. So often I wonder whether the things that we say and the things that we talk about actually break through. Meaning, wait 1 second. Yeah, when it breaks through. Meaning we have our sandbox, you know? We have the thing that we do in our particular part of the globe, our particular space. But there's also this wider world of sorts. This there's other sandboxes. There's other realities. There's one reality called mainstream media. All those things are different worlds that these people exist in regards to their own particular reality. All of these realities, to some degree, are relative to one another. But I often wonder, what is it like in some of those other realities? I can only get into the headspace for a while, but I don't necessarily have the context in regards to the digital world. Do what we talk about, reach it. I consider Forbes magazine to be somewhat of a mainstream media thing, so I'm going to say yes. This is a story in Forbes. The exploding DNC IT scandal is crazy as fiction. This is by Frank Miller. The reason why I'm going through this is because there's a Republican who asks a really good question. She asks an amazingly good question. It's a question that I'm curious from the standpoint of the FBI, from other intelligence agencies that deals with this stuff. And it's a question that has yet to be answered. And yet, as this plot thickens, you still get into this idea of leaked versus hacked. And I suspect that this Republican is getting at that. So I'm going to go through it. In a plot Tom Clancy might have dreamed up, an IT staffer who worked for Democrats in Congress was arrested by federal officials and charged with bank fraud. Fox News has reported that the officers and agents from the U.S. Capitol Police, the FBI, Customs, and Border Protection were involved in the arrest of Imran Awan at Delhi's airport not far from Washington, D.C., as he tried to flee to Pakistan. Awan has pleaded not guilty to bank fraud, but his strange case has all the feelings of an opening scene of a movie that might soon include political corruption and much more. Democrats are being understandably quiet about the Hill staffer who has been employed by Deborah Wasserman Schultz as of Tuesday morning, but has now reportedly been fired. Politico reported that Awan is at the center of a criminal investigation potentially impacting dozens of lawmakers. Awan was arrested after wiring $283,000 from the Congressional Federal Credit Union to Pakistan, says the Daily Caller. Now, RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel has gone on Fox Business to demand that Democrats explain what this is all about. I'm pretty sure that this woman's politics and mine diverge immensely. I am pretty sure we would argue and complain on one issue after the next. But guess what? What she's saying here makes perfect sense. McDaniel said, "We have to get to the bottom of this, and Deborah Wasserman Schultz has obstructed at every level on something that affects potentially our national security." So to have this gentleman try and leave the country yesterday, and now we know there's bank fraud, and we know he destroyed these hard drives. When you read the story about the Marine that found him in the apartment he was trying to rent, I mean, it's a long story, but something we got to get to the bottom of. We're not hearing the Democrats talk about it at all. Where is Deborah Wasserman Schultz? We also need to know why the DNC never turned over their hard drives to the FBI to review it as to their hacking situation. Well, that's interesting. Where's Deborah Wasserman Schultz? And we also need to know why the DNC never turned over the hard drives to the FBI to review it as to their hacking situation. Russia hacked us. But no, we don't want to turn over those servers. We're going to turn them over to a private entity to which we are paying. That's what we want to do. So Democrats are on TV and they're grandstanding every chance they get, but they're not complying and they're not being forthright with their role. The criminal investigation alleges stealing equipment from members' offices without their knowledge and committing serious, potentially illegal violations on House IT network. McDaniels is so worked up because Awan allegedly sold hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment from House offices and even allegedly funneled sensitive congressional data off-site in what some are calling a massive cyber security breach. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, right? You've had somebody who essentially was doing really bogus stuff in regards to the interest, meaning their servers. He had access to their servers. He had access to information involving the politicians. They're concerned, saying, wait a minute, this guy was an IT staffer. He could have access to all sorts of information. What is the information that he has? Was he selling that information? Was he doing something else with that information? Was he fleeing the country with that information? What was he doing with that information? Is it possible that the staffer has something to do with the leak? Is it possible that the DNC is trying to cover it up? These are questions. I don't know the answer to these questions. We're just saying she's making a damn good point. Last Sunday, the Daily Caller reported that the FBI seized smashed hard drives to Awan's home. Awan has worked for more than a dozen House Democrats. So understand, that's data, potentially from all of those people that this guy had access to. When allegations began to surface, some Democrats fired Awan, but Representative Wasserman Schultz kept him on staff. Oh, she's a sweetheart. There are more questions than answers, but all of this is causing many to ask about the DNC hacked servers before last election for some reason were never made available to the FBI investigators. That's an interesting question. There's finally somebody in the media who's asking that question. When I scream at the top of my lungs about whether or not we're being heard in the outside world, the question becomes whether or not Forbes is the outside world. There are more questions than answers, but all of this is causing many to ask about the DNC hacked servers before the last election that for some reason were never turned over to the Federal Bureau of Investigations. You explain to me. A report comes out that says, yeah, we weren't hacked, it was leaked. Somebody manipulated the data to make it look like Russia hacked us. DNC never gave their service to the FBI. DNC paid CrowdStrike to do some kind of analysis. Is it possible that the analysis that CrowdStrike was doing was somehow doing something that they had no business doing in regards to making it look like somebody else did it? I'm stuck with the problem that the DNC, if they were actually hacked, they would probably turn their information over so analysis could be done on their systems. It seems immensely cheesy to me. It does. It seems immensely cheesy to me that they would say no. Instead of giving it over to this organization that's supposed to actually do this for our government, we're going to pay this other organization to do something, to look over it and to give out information. That doesn't seem a little fishy to you? Meaning all those people who are saying they've made some kind of assessment, they're doing an assessment based on CrowdStrike's information. These analysts, these professionals, these people who worked in NSA, CIA, all these other groups, who came out and said, it's a leak, it's not a hack. If you check the data itself, the metadata, it comes across as being clearly a leak. They even go so far as to say they question who was actually doing the report for that. Meaning, who were the NSA agents that actually said this was a hack? And why didn't those agents do a full report? Meaning, why didn't those agents look at all the data necessary to come to an actual conclusion? That's an interesting question. All of these things are questions. What I will say is if at least Forbes magazine has got to the point where they're saying, why didn't the DNC just turn those over? It's a little fishy that you're going to give this CrowdStrike. It's even fishier that CrowdStrike has been somewhat, I want to say mauled, but mauled may be too strong of a word in regards to the legitimacy of their analysis. We'll see. I'm hoping this catches fire. At the very least, you have Deborah Wasserman-Schultz, and I've been seeing this picture a lot, dealing with this. So, the media will go across something if they think it's a scandal. For something like this, yeah, at some point, they would kind of start digging in and saying, hey, why didn't they pass those servers over the CrowdStrike? Hey, why didn't they do this? They would start asking questions at some point. But right now, you must understand, if they find anything that contradicts their narrative, it would mean that they've been lying for 8 months. And I don't necessarily know if the media is going to turn on a dime and say, yes, I'm sorry, we were liars. We didn't know what the hell we were talking about. Now let's talk about Deborah Wasserman-Schultz and what went on in regards to the DNCs. So, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I want this to take off. Because when you start looking at this, the guy even had Deborah Wasserman-Schultz's iPad address. He had her iPad address. Meaning all of those files and everything else that these people are talking about, this guy had access to. This guy had access to servers and everything else. It's a leak. It's not a hack. And they're trying to put sanctions for something that they don't have evidence on. And that people are now contradicting the evidence that's coming up. And people are asking questions. Literally asking questions. Forbes is asking questions. The questions that this guy is asking goes to the heart of those Russian hacking narratives. Meaning, depending upon how this is answered, you may get a break in the Russian hack. I'm skeptical because this is the story they've ran with for so long. I don't necessarily think they're going to repudiate themselves. But any honest look into this, you still come up with questions of, okay, maybe it wasn't a hack. This guy had access to that stuff. Is it possible that guy could have leaked it? Yes. Yes. If he had her iPad address, is it possible he could have taken that information? Yes. Any honest answer is yes. Why didn't the DNC turn their servers over to the FBI? The honest answer is, look, what makes more sense? They gave it to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike did what the DNC needed them to do. They gave that information over to the FBI, CIA, whoever else. These guys doing an independent investigation to say, oh, wait a minute. It wasn't Russian. Data was copied and forged. I guess I'm asking which is more likely. That's all. Is it possible to any degree that with all of these people having access to the DNC's information, the servers, that it wasn't a hack, that it's more likely that somebody got their hands on that information and passed that information? So that's where I'm going with it. Until I see something smoking gun, these people, these lefties, get and scream about it all they want. I think it's a leak. I go with Julian Assange on it, saying it's a leak. And this Republican woman is asking the right questions. So, I give her credit on it. I don't know anything else. I don't know her politics. I'm just saying in this very specific case, that woman is asking the right question. So, alright, it's 9 o'clock. So, I am going to take questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. My wife has left me at this point. She's gone to where I don't know where she is. Oh, by the way, the Tom Perez thing. So the DNC is in debt apparently, and the DNC has been having difficulties earning money. Oh, so sad. They've gone through what, $200,000 more in debt. It's a pity. It hurts me to my heart. Who do you represent? What do you stand for? You're losing progressives, dude. Those people, for the most part, don't consider themselves Democrats. Now, the question becomes, in 2018, who do you vote for? That's the question, right? That's the thing that lingers in progressives. Who do you vote for? If there's a Democrat up and there's a Republican up and that Republican up that is pretty disgusting, do you vote for the Democrat? My policy is scorched earth. I'm sticking with that policy. I'm not voting for any particular Democrat that I don't think lives up to my standards. If I see a Green Party candidate, that candidate is getting my vote. I'm sticking with this idea of you're going to represent me or you're not getting my vote. I don't care who's on the other end. That's where I'm at. That is a scorched earth approach. If that means the Democratic Party doesn't win again, then God, I'm sorry for the Democratic Party. Nobody owes their vote to any particular person. Nobody owes their support to any particular person. They earn your support based upon the things that they do. And if they're not going to do the things that represent your interests, they shouldn't get your vote. I don't care what they're wearing on their collar, meaning Democrat, Republican, Green, or anything in between. So, yes, I have a sick pleasure that Tom Perez is having difficulty raising money. I do. I'm sorry. I do. I'm a horrible person. Yes. If you guys have any questions. Oh, dude. Garden knows JW. Tim flipped out again. The video is on his channel. Gotta be honest, I don't care. I saw the video, Garden. And I thought to myself, seems kind of ridiculous. I don't quite get it. He certainly has feelings about it. Okay. That's the way I got it. Look, I know people take this stuff pretty seriously. I gotta be honest, I don't. I can't prove anything exists outside of myself. And that's a weird place to be, meaning I need to take everything to a certain level of ambiguity. I don't necessarily have the emotional investment to care. That sounds strange, but it is. It's like you control your own feelings, man. If you want to feel that way and you want to flip out in a video over somebody saying the way you did an interview was tepid, God bless. I have my own channel. I am perfectly okay with being left to my own devices. Yeah, when I join that, when I say, hey, okay, I'll be on your channel, my biggest issue initially was, well, yeah, I'm still going to be me when I do things. And yeah, I'm still going to be me. There's this weird, how can I say it? It's almost like a weird push to not cover things that you're associated with when you're doing that way, if that makes sense. Like, so Tim may do something and I may say, okay, Tim did that, I have an opinion on it, but I'm going to moderate my opinion on it because we're, for the most part, a team in that sense. Yeah, I don't have that anymore. And I didn't necessarily like that particular thing. I think the Sam Cedar interview was probably a good point where I was like, oh, dude, that didn't go well. I didn't say anything about the Sam Cedar interview. I just kind of say, okay, I'll leave it. entanglements, man. It's this weird thing. It's like Caitlin Johnson made the point, hold your shape. It's like when you're interacting with people, this thing of holding your shape. Yes, we're buddies. Yes, we're friends. Yes, you're going to have certain opinions and everything else. It's just those friendships create weird energies, so I put it that way. But no, no hard feelings at all. If he felt that particular way, I'm sorry. I just called it the way I understood it. It wasn't necessarily meant to be offensive. So. Yeah, he was. Penn Welford. He was more angry around Ben Dixon calling Brock stooge. You're right. He was. He was. And I don't blame him. I gotta be honest. I'd be pissed too. Actually, I wouldn't be pissed. I wouldn't care. I don't care about Ben Dixon. If I'm being honest. But yeah, he had some feelings about it. He was pissed. And I don't blame him. Look, you're on the left. You have all these lefties. And in being all these lefties, for the most part, you have this idea of a general idea on how these people are. Not necessarily because you yourself and all you are going to fall in line on everything, but you give a benefit of the doubt, saying, look, this person is on the left. This person is, for the most part, did this thing for God knows how long. Do I know who that person is? I can't tangibly touch who Tim Black is, but certainly the people who've seen him over and over again have this idea of who the man is. Trying to say that he's anything other than what he is just because you dislike somebody he was supporting, it's fucking ridiculous. I don't care whether it's Ben Dixon or Noah or anybody else. Attacking the guy on that front is insane. Attacking Caitlin Johnson on that front is insane. I used the child thing to grow up. To grow up. The guy gave his support to Caitlin Johnson. He should have given his support to Caitlin Johnson. Caitlin Johnson made a damn good point. Fair enough. I don't blame him for being pissed. I don't necessarily invest my feelings in the stuff in that way. He expressed it how he expressed it. So I don't necessarily blame him for flipping out. He was upset. Let's see. This is, have you seen anything? This is A. Rain. Have you seen anything from George Webb about the Awan brothers? 4 brothers, 4 wives, paid $4 million as IT specialists by Congress. I haven't seen that one. I was going by The Hill and by, this one was Forbes magazine. I was looking into the story itself. I hadn't been following the story. I only started getting into the story when I saw FBI lock somebody up trying to flee the country, and they found smashed servers at Deborah Wasserman Schultz. And as you get into the story, you realize, wait a minute, he had access to those servers. Wait a minute, this report just said it was a leak. Wait a minute, somebody did something to make it look like Russia did it. These Russian hackers with all these skills and everything else could get into servers and get into computers. But they were so inept and insufficient that they left evidence behind so you can know it was Russia. I'm sorry, man. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. How do you reconcile your scorched earth with people who suffer from the GOP? Jeremy Scott. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's not a, it's one of those things where it's let me ask you this, Jeremy. Would you agree with me that anything that takes place takes somewhat of a lift? Somebody has to take a lift. So in order for civil rights to change, Martin Luther King had to take a lift. Malcolm X had to take a lift. All those African Americans that bitched, protested, sit-ins, they had to take the lift. Meaning they had to take the clubs that the cops were hitting them with. They had to take the scorn of the city and the civilians who was looking at the things that they were doing. You understand that it was creating friction, conflict, and everything else. It's not necessarily it was a pretty scene. But certainly they had to do it. When Martin Luther King came out of jail one time, Cornel West tells the story. And the police had dogs that were barking at him. Had all these things that were assailing him. Trying to intimidate him, trying to scare him, trying to break him. And he comes out, he's shaken. And he says, I'm doing this for my people. Think about that. It wasn't that he was a Superman or anything else. He was doing it because he realized that this is this is the price. This is the price. You have all sorts of things that are being assailing you, meaning automation, environmental collapse, economic collapse. You have all of these things. pressures that are on you, that are on your particular country. You're living in a capitalistic system, in a model that doesn't believe that those things actually exist. Meaning the economic system to which we go with is eating itself, and it's destroying the environment, and while it's doing so, it's also creating an incentive structure for us to kill people abroad in order to create jobs here in this country. I'm making the point to you that this doesn't work. It doesn't work. The basic model between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, for the most part, are similar. There are minor differences in those things. Yes, some are going to be more grotesque. But do you honestly believe that the Democratic Party, the party that's supposed to be the left party in this country and is supposed to come up with actual solutions for the things in this country, what are their solutions for automation? They're talking about Russia. What is their solution for college? We still have people paying $20,000, $30,000 a year. What are their solutions? What are their solutions for ecological damage, environmental damage, economic collapse? What are their solutions? That's what I'm asking you. I understand that people are suffering through the GOP. People were suffering under the Democrats also. Whether you realize it or not, 95% of the wealth went to the top 1%. Obama, 95% of the people he was killing abroad were civilians. They were civilians. I understand that people are suffering through the GOP. This is a winter to which we must suffer. I get it. I get it. If those people need to lose their health care, for those people to wake up and say, holy shit, I have something to do in politics. If those people need their rights curtailed by these fascist Republicans who's in office, and those people need to wake the hell up and realize, hey, maybe I need to be a part of this conversation. The level of existence that people would like to live by is the level of existence they're going to get. If they believe that they don't want to be a part of the political process and Republican keeps winning, then Republican keeps winning. Nothing changes if we continue to do things that we do. If we have to walk in the wilderness for a while, then we walk in the wilderness for a while. I'm sorry. That's scorched earth. I get it. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. We're in Virginia. We're in the heart of Dixie. We have an asshole that's in office, or somebody who's running for office, that thinks it's perfectly okay to give transvaginal ultrasounds to women. Do you honestly believe I think that's fucking awesome? Do you believe I think that's awesome? Do you believe I think it's awesome that Jeff Sessions is going to prosecute people for drug laws? No, I don't. I don't. Do you believe I think it was awesome if Hillary Clinton would have privatized Social Security? Do you think I think it's awesome if she would have started a war in Syria, putting a missile defense shield in that country? They are already ramping up this thing with Russia. She would have went into office with this idea of starting a goddamn nuclear war. I get it. The GOP are goblins. I get it. Donald Trump are horrible people. But you understand that the reason why Republicans win is because Democrats lose. It's not so much that Republicans win. It's not that their policies are popular. Democrats have become so much like Republicans that they can no longer distinguish themselves on the issues to which they used to distinguish themselves. Economics. Economics. If they're going to fail, they're failing on their own. A Republican should not get elected over a Democrat if that Democrat was running in the way he was philosophically supposed to run. It's not my fault that they don't get my vote. That's the point I'm making to you. It's not Jill Stein's fault if the Democrat doesn't get their vote. It's nobody's fault but their own. That's the point I'm getting at. That's the point I'm getting at. Buster Peak, why do you call him like your uncle? You put me in mind of an uncle. That wasn't a slant. I mean, that was actually a compliment. He did. He just put me in mind like an uncle. Let's see. Yeah, that's his that's his show. That's his show. The point is Obama is no better than Trump. No, Obama was better than Trump. Let's be honest. There is a disparity between those things. You would hear me rant and rave about Obama, but there are degrees of difference. That's all I'm saying. You can look at two things and say, yes, one thing is a degree of difference. The problem is tepidness. He's tepid. He does things that are half-assed and half-measures, so the next guy who comes in can just roll them back. Meaning, yes, we can roll back all of these policies that the first person put in. That's the problem. If nothing else, One thing I've learned about Trump in that office, you don't need to be tepid as a president of the United States. You can be a force of nature in that office. Donald Trump is inept. He has the capacity to be amazing in that office. He just didn't take the opportunity. He could have came in and kept his promise. I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicare and everybody's getting health care. He would have been lionized in that office. He could have still given those shitty tax cuts, and he could have still did things that would have monetized the presidency. But he would have been almost unassailable in regards to trying to take him out that office in 2020. Not now. Not now. He's vulnerable as all hell. Obama did expand the surveillance states. Hey, Ray, that's my point. I would bitch and moan and complain about him. He was locking up whistleblowers. Understand that. Part of the thing about politics that I absolutely hate, I hate hypocrisy in politics. Locking up whistleblowers, left and right. Hey, they just murdered 2 Reuters reporters. Yeah, man, you're not supposed to tell that, so I'm locking you up. Not the people who actually murdered the Reuters reporters. One person after the next will reveal something that the United States government was doing that was illegal. And Obama would lock those people up. Trump comes in office and say, hey, we have all these leaks. Democrats are like, hey, we need to protect whistleblowers. We need to protect whistleblowers. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. No, I said Obama is better than Trump. I said there's Jeremy. No, I said there's a difference in those things. I said you can look at these 2 quantities and say one is better than the other, even though the difference between those things are not as significant as people are saying. There's a difference in tone. Yes, Obama he's a moderate Republican in that sense. But the function, the basic structure of how these 2 people are in office hasn't fundamentally changed. I'm sorry. The Clinton propaganda machine would make Stalin. No, it wouldn't. I'm sorry. Joseph Stalin, that's a different animal, man. I was watching tapes on that yesterday. That's intense. That was intense. Yeah, that was intense. A sellout puppet. Are you familiar with the Ukrainian election influence in the DNC? I saw something about that. I have to be honest, I don't know enough about it to speak on it. I know a little bit about the Ukrainian politics in regards to what took place with the break, the civil war in that sense, how Russia was putting in influencing that particular thing, saying little green men when they were actually putting people into military into it. You must understand, this is geopolitical politics. In the same way that we protect our borders, Russia also protect their borders. Meaning, if you're expanding NATO and you get a situation where the Ukrainian government becomes more westernized, and then there's talks about the Ukrainian government joining NATO, that means NATO is going to be on the Russian border, and they're not having that. Putin is not having it. We wouldn't have it. He's not crazy for doing it. Not saying you should have did it. I'm just saying he's not crazy for doing it. If you're looking at a situation saying, I need a buffer from around my sides. And you must understand, Russia's been invaded multiple times. They've lost millions and millions of people. I think in World War II. Look up these wars, man. Stalingrad by itself. Stalingrad was the breaking of the German army. But they lost like 1 million people in that battle alone. So they're sensitive about their borders. I don't blame them for being sensitive about their borders. And you have all these countries, hostile countries, that are surrounding them. So yes, I don't blame them for being sensitive. Don't blame them at all. No more donations. Ukraine has right-wing factions and further hard right-wing factions. There's no real left in Ukraine. Yeah, man, USSR War 112. Yeah, they did. You know, it's funny. There's a certain amount of propaganda that goes to this thing that the United States went into the war and we just won it. We were an aspect of it, and we helped win it. We didn't win it. If you want to talk about where that war ended or where the German army broke, it was Stalingrad. It broke the back of the German army. The United States started pumping out so much materials. I don't think you understand how much infrastructure we had in this particular country. Planes, all these things. We started getting auto companies to make war equipment. We had so many people off at war. Then we had all these women going into the offices to work themselves. At the end of that war, the United States was able to put 2 full complements on 2 sides of the planet. The United States was a superpower. And we were somewhat unchallenged in that power in that sense. And there was even talk about just going into the Soviet Union at that point. It's amazing. I'm fascinated by world politics in a sense, in the way these things break down. Pat Hacker, no, you're right. Russia didn't influence Ukraine. The West was responsible for the Ukraine. It's not that simple, though. Come on, it's not that simple. The West, if you look at European Parliament, you could see them saying things, trying to get this enticement to the Ukraine. It wasn't necessarily non-influence. They were doing things to kind of push that civil war on, with this idea of trying to pull the Ukraine to the West. So it's not that straightforward of nobody did anything. Yes, and funding for Syrian terrorists. Donald Trump did that. Good job. Less reverential and clear-eyed view of pros and cons of Sanders. Yeah, D. Martin, I like the guy. I don't like complaining about the guy. Look, Debbie would come out, she would just bash him. Relentlessly bash him. I'm not there. I don't like this country with this idea of war talk. I don't like it. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, you had a situation where Khrushchev was doing all those saber rattling. The United States was essentially attacking Cuba. And making attacks on Cuba, Castro gets terrified and says, I need help. Big brother over there, Soviet Union, says, okay, we're going to put missiles in Cuba. He didn't do it willy-nilly. He did it because we were doing things to undermine his government. People aren't crazy when they make decisions to try to protect themselves. If North Korea determines we need a bomb because we need to protect ourselves from the United States, North Korea is not crazy, since the United States is adding them to a sanctions list. If the United States was okay with taking out Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, bombing Somalia, and all these other countries without any particular constitutional authority to do so, why would North Korea sit there and not try to do anything to protect themselves? Why would Iran not sit there and try to do anything to protect themselves, particularly when the president, Congress, are talking about unraveling a deal that was supposed to essentially end those things? I'm making this point to you that our aggression, part of the problem of not seeing ourselves fairly, is when we do aggression abroad, we never look at it from the perspective of the person we're murdering. That's what I'm saying. My issue with Sanders in this case is because Sanders is essentially vocalizing something. He's being the Colin Powell, the honest man, saying, yes, this war is okay. Or at the very least, it's okay to do sanctions for something that we don't really have evidence on. Or at the very least, there's contradictory evidence to the assertions that have been made. Angry Cascadian. Would you be surprised if our U.S. deep state has moved from just trafficking drugs and weapons to trafficking human organs and depleted uranium? I don't know, dog. I have no idea. Look, I'm not all that surprised on stuff that the federal government would do, if I'm being honest. When you look at Hoover, when he was in that office, when he was sending like COINTELPRO, going so far as to like undermine these groups and everything else, the CIA, it works in the shadows. How the CIA funds itself and all this other stuff. I've heard of this thing of drug trafficking and everything else from the CIA. It may be true. I don't know. Undermining other governments, yes. Spying on other governments, yes. Murdering people abroad, yes. All those things are in the CIA handbook. trafficking organs just seem a little intense to me. That's all. Also, deep state, don't like that term. I've heard people say it. It's mystifying something that's not really mystified. You're in a capitalistic system. As you're in that capitalistic system, you have all of these people with this idea of scarcity. I need to get enough for me to live. At a certain point, I need to get enough for my family to live. What am I going to do in this particular world to get enough? To get enough. I need to maximize my profits. It just so happens that maximizing your profits is often at the expense of somebody else. If I need to get money, I need to get that money off somebody else. Whatever I'm doing for the most part is going to take advantage of something from somebody else at some point, because the point is to maximize my profits. You end up with a situation where some people have amazing advantages, and as time goes on, those people are able to build on those advantages. The people who don't, they don't. The money tends to flow to the top, meaning the more money you got, the more money you tend to get. When you look at the income scale, the amount of money that's gone up to the top 1%, to the top 0.01%, it's astonishing. It's astonishing. Now, if you're in that system where everybody's maximizing their profit, you also have a political system that's based purely on cash. Meaning I need X amount of dollars to get elected, meaning I'm going to lean a particular way to get the money, because if I don't lean that way, I'm not getting that money. That lean becomes somewhat of a scoot. And so you start off with somebody like Jimmy Carter. Then you end up with somebody like Bill Clinton. Then you end up with somebody like Obama. Then you end up with somebody like Hillary Clinton. You see this trend. This trend is moving further and further to the left. People who are supposed to be Democrats all of a sudden are now looking like Republicans, because they are. They're not doing it for their health. They're doing it because they're leaning a particular way, because they understand that they can get money from those resources. Yes, I give you money if you back my interests. So yes, I'm giving you all this money from the healthcare industry. You better hold your steed on Obamacare. You better not make that thing single payer. You're not going to necessarily cut us out this interest. Yes, we're going to give all this money from weapons manufacturers. So yes, I'm okay with saying yes to this particular war, because if we're using those weapons, at the very least we need to replenish those weapons. Every bomb that I drop, every person that I shoot and kill, that's another bomb that needs to be created, and that's another terrorist created. So we get to use another bomb, we get to use another bullet. If those people go back and say, we're cutting the military budget in half, hell, I'll cut it further than half, but we're cutting it in half, is the congressman going to go back to their districts and say, yeah, we need to cut these jobs? The military wasn't meant to be a jobs program. It was meant to deal with threats abroad. We've been using it for something it wasn't supposed to be used for, and we've been killing people abroad in that capacity of using it that way. We're cutting the budget. Is a congressman going to go back and say that? Is a congressman going to say something that's going to have those people lose their jobs? Meaning, are they going to cut the military budget if the military budget being cut is going to cut jobs in this country? These are incentives. These incentives are built into the model itself. You don't necessarily need somebody moving the strings. You do have people who are trying to work for their self-interest. And yes, you have groups of people who have self-interest that coincide with one another. If you want to call that the deep state, that's fine. I'm saying that's a property of the model. It's not necessarily the property of any particular person pulling strings. Here's the thing that people sometimes miss. You as an individual are not separate and distinct from your environment. If you were a Nazi, or if you grew up in Nazi Germany, you will probably be a Nazi. To some degree, your personality may be similar, but that personality will be ensconced in what it's meant to be German. If you grew up in Europe, if you grew up in some African country, you are a product of your environment. You're not separate and distinct from the things to which you engage in. You're not. So, the point I'm trying to make is, if you put people in that particular situation where they get those massive amounts of money, they're born into families with these massive amounts of wealth, you would probably behave in similar ways. Yes, you would wish people did better. Yes, you would wish people behaved in a different way. But ultimately, those people in many respects are a product of their environment, meaning they're not separate and distinct from the environment. That environment is etched on them in the same way that environment is etched on you. So yes, they've taught themselves They bring their kids up. The thing that they have in their families, their social clubs, the way they interact with one another, their sandbox, their reality tells them it is okay to do this. It is okay to maximize my profit, even if I'm fucking over other people. Even if I'm killing people abroad. My goal is to maximize my profit. People matter less. Now, understand from their perspective, that's how they are. No, I'm not necessarily forgiving of them because they are making that choice in order to do those things. But understand, if you're in the situation, you may do the exact same thing. You're a product of your environment. As you grow up, your society etches itself on you. Religion, your parents, your grandparents, the people who you interact with at school, the people who you interact with at work, the people who you interact with outside. Those things are etched upon you. You're not separate and distinct from those things. You as a person need certain things in order to persist in this world, in order to be a whole person. If you don't have those things, you will suffer certain plagues. Well, that's just being a person. The things that people do cannot necessarily be completely directly related to that particular individual. Whether that's somebody robbing a bank, whether that's somebody doing drugs, those things have to be taken in consideration of saying what's the person's environment and what are the factors in our particular society that led that person to do that. Those things don't change until you change the society itself. Those people are behaving that way, not necessarily because they're somehow different than other people, and not necessarily because they're monsters. Yes, they're doing monstrous things, but ultimately they're products of their environment. They're products of their environment. I often wonder if I was born into that particular space, would I act in that particular way? I would hope. No. I would hope I still retain these aspects of who I am right now. But there's no way I can know that's true. I don't know if that's true. I'm making the point that these people that you're considering deep state and everything else, those are just people. Those are people functioning in a particular program. That program says I need to get as much as I can possibly get because the system tells me that that's what I'm supposed to do. You would wish that they were more empathetic. They're not. To be fair, it's not their responsibility to be so. We, the 99%, makes the determination on the lives that we ourselves are going to have. In Britain, they have healthcare. They have healthcare. They don't have to wake up in the morning figuring out if somebody gets sick. That's the level of existence they themselves chose to live. School, if you're talking about Germany, school and healthcare covered by state. That's the level of existence they themselves as citizens have determined that they're worthy of having. I can go one country after the next. The plagues, the things that assail us in this country are not anywhere else in the world. You've taken this idea of American exceptionalism. That's a ridiculous idea, but you've taken that idea and gone with it, not looking behind the scenes, realizing that that's just a slogan for a bumper sticker, in a sense. The reality of it is you're driving a lemon. Those people are not going to give you anything until you stand up and say, this is what we want and this is the level of existence we're willing to have. Deep state or not, this stuff boils down to the people themselves. A movement changes things. That's all I'm saying. Did someone say, Jeremy Scott, that's wrong. Did someone say HB made a video about Jamarl and Tim? It's probably a 2-hour video, pause every 5 seconds. I like HB. I like our bastard. I like him. We don't agree on everything. Of course, he's further to the left, but at the very least, he hit some stuff where I was like, yeah, I agree. He's on the right point. That's funny. Angry Cascadian. Thank you for continuing to incorporate human psychology and Maslow's hierarchy of needs into your political discussions. Well, it needs to be. It needs to be. We always act as if, you know, the criminal justice system, they would put somebody on trial and everything else, and they would drag the person in, and they would just put the person in prison without really asking the question of why is that person behaving that way? And is there some aspects of society that's causing that? Does that person have all the things that he needs in his particular life to be a whole person? And if he's missing something, and if he's missing something, is it possible that the thing that he's missing is causing aberrant behavior? And if that's true, How could the society purely just put this person away? This person is not defective. This person is behaving the way a person behaves when they're missing something. His particular expression is his particular expression. I'm just making the point that people handle those things in different ways. We have a society in which we continuously put pressure on people just for the sake of putting pressure on people. It doesn't need to be that way. It's a choice. It's a choice. Garnome, you're right. There are limits. There are limits. It's not an absolute. I don't take it as an absolute. I don't take most things as an absolute. There's personal responsibility to a point. There is to a point. No more donations. Will Hillary Clinton be so out of touch with reality that she would actually run a third time? There's no way. There's no way. I can't. No, there's no way. There's no way. No way. I can't see it. I would be blown away by that. I would be blown away by that. There's no way. Yeah. Yeah. You heard my feelings. There's no way. All right. It is 9:58. And so I am going to call it a night. Darwin Bird, I missed 420 chess. Yeah, man, I'm going to have to do it. I didn't think anybody liked it. I thought it was just me playing online. And I didn't necessarily think anybody cared. Yeah. I might try to bring it up. Ditsy Lilig, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. They're currently responsible for the opioid crisis. No. Look, I'd argue that what's responsible for the opioid crisis is the living situation in our country. You have 50% of the people in poverty. You're in a capitalistic society. Your freedoms are determined by the cash in your pocket today. You know, and think about it. Your range of freedom in a capitalistic society, what you can do, what you can eat, where you can go, where you vacation, how you spend your time is purely dependent on what you have in your pocket, what you can spend. If half of the country is in poverty, richest country on the planet, half of it is in poverty, what are their decisions based? What is their decision space? What are the things they can do in their particular life when they don't have the resources to meet their needs? And what do you do to try to escape that? What do you do to escape it? So I made this point that people have needs. What if those needs aren't met? Do those people exhibit aberrant behavior? I would say yes. Can you make a case that opioids is a way of trying to escape those situations? I would say yes. I would say yes. Absolutely say yes. I don't necessarily think people just say, hey, willy-nilly, I'm going to go and get some drugs. I don't know anybody who says I'm just going to smoke heroin today. I do think if you're living in a particular situation, then yes, you are more susceptible than somebody who's not, including this idea of addiction. So yeah, I agree. Colin Powell, honest. Smokey over the line. I think he was, man. I don't know. I think he was. He was considered honest. I'll put it that way. At the time when Colin Powell went and did that report saying that there were weapons in Iraq and all this other stuff, just garbage report that they set him up to do, he was considered the honest man. I remember there was like a poll of 80-some% of people thought he was the only honest person in that administration. So he was the person they sent out to make that case. They sent him out to lie. They sent him out to lie. They held him out to dry. I make this analogy between Colin Powell and Bernie Sanders because people consider him to be the honest man. That honest man is essentially saying Russia did something that Russia didn't do. That's the point I'm making. Hey, Rain, yeah, I am. I was doing the show on Tim's channel on Wednesday, so I do think I'm just gonna do it on this channel at 8 p.m. I'll put a thing so it's kind of a repeat so everybody would know it. Just a last statement on that. Somebody said I was being so insensitive to him. I can only regard this from the perspective to which I take it. I just think to myself, if somebody said I was somewhat tepid in my interview because I didn't. If somebody said I was somewhat tepid in my interview, my response would either be I disagree or I agree. There's no emotional investment at this point. Now, from his standpoint, from his perspective, let's go into his perspective. What would be the perspective that would make somebody act in that particular way? My wife hates when I do this, but I try to do this because I try to understand where people are coming from. She always like, I hate when you try to dissect people. But yeah, for a moment, and this isn't being offensive or anything else, I'm just saying, I try to think to myself, what's the perspective of the individual that would cause that particular behavior? Meaning, if it was me, what would elicit that behavior? If my scarcity was on the line, like if it was a situation where, well, no, even then it wouldn't matter, but I could see another person, if they were in a situation where they felt like they were in a pressure cooker, they're doing something where their livelihood is at stake, meaning he does this full time, this is his channel, that's who he is, his reputation, and you get this feeling that somebody is saying you're being tepid. Maybe I never really said he was being tepid. I never thought that way. I was thinking in the sense of him being somewhat gentle in his interview. I didn't necessarily think he wanted to ruffle feathers. Whatever. To each their own. Each person can have their feelings. I don't care. Robert Russell. Looking forward to a great show where you collaborate with Tim. Yeah, that's not on me. I mean, it's open. I don't necessarily care. I don't really have any hard feelings about it. In fact, I don't have any feelings about it. I'm kind of apathetic towards it. But, you know, maybe. It's up to him. Yeah, I think he is too. He's dropping friends or people who were considered friends over small stuff. Snork says, I've been gone all day and still don't know what happened. Like the guy on an intercontinental flight during the Super Bowl. I did a video on it. I did a video talking about it. I don't want to, you know, continue to go over it because clearly he had some serious feelings about it. I watched a video like, holy shit, I think he's talking about me. So somebody made a video about me. And it just so happened to be Tim Black. And I wasn't necessarily getting money off it or anything else. I wasn't even getting that many views. I was doing it because I just thought it was nice to collaborate. And it was like, he booted me off his show because I said his interview was tepid. That's what took place. So, that's what happened, Snort. You can see it on my other video. It's funny. You miss George McGovern. Okay. I don't miss George McGovern. Oh, God, no. I don't think I said anything inappropriate. I don't think that way at all. I don't apologize if I don't think I did anything. I apologize because I'm looking at it from his standpoint and saying, this is my image of sorts. And, you know, people apologize in a perfunctory way when it's like, oh, dude, I didn't mean no harm. I'm sorry. But, no, there was no harm was meant. But, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I have no... Yeah. He threw softballs at Nina, too. Well, tell me, Chad Wilson, he threw softballs at Nina. What would have been a hard ball that you would have thrown at Nina Turner? Tell me. Explain me on that one. Angry Cascadian. Oh, yeah, there's no hard feelings, man. Honestly, I had no feelings about it. It's his channel. He does it how he needs to do it. Yeah, the flipping out doesn't look good. I gotta, yeah. That doesn't look... I told my wife, I said, if I flip out over something that somebody said to me, stop me before doing that video. It just doesn't look good. If I'm flipping out over something of them killing people, leave me to my devices. Of the things that I want to matter to me, that I want to actually lose my shit over, I want it to be something that matters. If somebody is killing somebody, if somebody is hungry, if somebody's doing something that they have no business doing, I want to come out and I want to flip the fuck out. I don't want to flip out over minutia. So. Chad Wilson, to ask her about cheating directly. Nina Turner is in a party that's abusive to her. I asked Nina Turner about that. Believe it or not. And when I was at the People Summit, I asked her more so about Sanders in this case, but put it this way. My feeling was that Nina Turner, what did she said? Like, her association with the Democratic Party somewhat depends on what the Democratic Party is going to do. So it's not this fully thing where she's totally committed at that sense. She even was having this conversation about Bernie Sanders doing the People's Summit. Doing the People's Party. The People's Party is outside the Democratic Party. So she is flirting with that particular idea. She's definitely flirting with that idea. One more question. This is Jeremy Scott. If Trump fires Sessions to ultimately fire Mueller, are we headed for a constitutional crisis? Yes. Yes. If Trump knows what's good for him, Trump would not do that. He would not do that. That would look immensely bad. That would look immensely, immensely bad. Because understand, there's separation between the Attorney General and the President. Trump is trying to get Jeff Sessions to go after Hillary Clinton because he wants to obfuscate from the things that's going on with him. Bake that into the cake for the moment. If he gets to the point of saying, I'm going to fire the investigator who is investigating me, all hell will break loose. He would not be able to keep the Republicans on his side for that particular thing. The Republicans, for the most part, are okay with them going after Trump because they don't like Trump. They would prefer Pence in that office. If he does that, that would be one of the fastest ways to have Pence in that office. I honestly believe it. He can't do it. He's constrained by the politics of it. It looks too bad. The President of the United States comes out and fires Jeff Sessions in order to fire the guy who's investigating the President of the United States after already firing the first guy who was investigating the President of the United States. That would look horrible. That would look horrible. That would look absolutely horrible. Yeah, man, that would look horrible. That would be absolutely horrible. Sessions has too many lives to ruin. He can't leave yet. I've read that article, right? That's Dax Jacobs. I read the article where it was talking about Sessions is angry at Trump for saying it, but he doesn't want to leave. He has too much stuff to do. And the stuff that he was talking about was like drug reform, attacking all of these rolling back things that Eric Holder did regarding sentencing and drug laws, meaning we want to be able to put people in prison for longer for drug crimes. We want to be able to put people in prison by discrepancies of race, which is what Jeff Sessions is doing. We want to roll back the protections of the Voting Rights Act that Eric Holder was trying to implement off the table. That's what he wants to do in that office. That's why he doesn't want to leave. He wants to fuck over the country. He wants to put in drug laws, meaning going after people for smoking pot. That's why he doesn't want to leave. Fucking asshole. Well, see, all right, so Christy Brown, the investigation into the Russian hacks. This is interesting. So the DNC thing that's going on with Deborah Wasserman-Schultz is going to deal with the servers. If it comes back that something went on with those servers that directly impeaches the Russian hack story, that may actually intercept with the ridiculousness of the Russian hack. It may actually help. He is, I know. They like him. He's one of their boys in that sense. He's one of the good old boys. Exactly. Buster Peak. You're right. Democrats, progressives, conservatives, they all hate him. Nobody is going to be there when he's fired. My prediction is he resigns. Oh, you talking about Sessions? No, Sessions not going anywhere. Trump, however, Trump is constrained in that office, believe it or not. They're literally putting through legislations to try to put sanctions on Russia. If they have overwhelming numbers, they can absolutely neuter Trump. Meaning Trump wouldn't be able to do squat about the sanctions. That's amazing. I've never seen them do that with a president, saying you can have no hand in doing these sanctions. We are going to do it themselves. He doesn't have any support. He ran against the party when he ran in the election, meaning he ran against the Republican ideology. He got in that office, for the most part, went hard right. And so the things that the Republicans would agree with him on are tax cuts and all this other stuff. Yeah, they want to get that stuff done because those are the things they want to do anyway. They want to fuck over their constituents in order to give that money to the rich. But they don't like the guy. The media doesn't like the guy. Democrats don't like the guy. Progressives don't like the guy. He is a small amount of support in this particular country. That being said, nobody is going to be there for a coup. Meaning, you would need Trump to do something magnificently bad. Firing Sessions would be something that's magnificently bad in order to get them to kind of go into that mindset of how do we get him out that office. They would prefer Pence. Pence will slide into that slot easily. And Pence will slide doing the most right-wing shit you've ever seen in your life. Pence slides into that slot. The media will go to sleep because it's a classic Republican. He looks like somebody's grandpa, even though the guy's a religious zealot and a maniac in regards to war policy. That's what you'll get. That's what you'll get. Dax Jacobs, Trump being president was a moonshot for Republicans. It's short term. It's short term. The things that he's doing are going to be overturned when the next president gets in office. The question becomes, who's that next president going to be? The best chance that the Democratic Party is going to have, the best chance the progressives are going to have to change the soul of the party will be 2020. That should be an all-out civil war with regards to the soul of the Democratic Party. Yes, Garneau, yes. That's the point. Pence can get shit done we don't want. I've made this point before that Pence is terrifying. He's terrifying. I know you guys think Donald Trump is a goblin. Pence is absolutely terrifying because Pence fits like a perfectly into the slot that they're talking about. He fits perfectly into the slot. Yeah, he's that scared. That just scares the fuck out of me. Paul Well, the Trump base will go batshit if they appear to make a move on Trump. That's also true. That's also true. That's also true. That's what concerns me about this. That's honestly what concerns me about this. I have multiple concerns going with all this. Hillary Clinton gets in office, concern me in the sense that she may start a war. Trump gets into this office and he's just Donald Trump. He's a reality show host. He shouldn't have nowhere near the presidency. He can't spell presidency. I don't want him anywhere near the presidency. He has a massive ego that only looks out for himself and has a history going through his entire life only looking out for himself. And that particular man who's only looking out for himself is now in charge of the United States with $1 trillion military. He's a reality show host. He got his jollies off of firing has-been celebrities trying to get back into the industry. That guy is president. If they take him out of office, all of that 20% of people that completely identify with that particular person where Trump could shoot somebody in New York and they'd be perfectly okay with it, those people would lose their shit. Those people would lose their shit. Who knows what happens at that point? That's a crapshoot. I have no idea. I have no idea. That being said, if Trump does go after the Attorney General in order to get relief, stop the investigation, all hell will break loose. That's my prediction. All hell will break loose. Okay, that's wrong, Jimmy Sky. You're right. I shouldn't have said he can't spell presidency. But sure, he can spell presidency. I think Democrats are craving a Pence takeover to their detriment. To their detriment. Donald Trump is the best thing on this planet. If you can't make your case against Donald Trump, you shouldn't be in office. You shouldn't have a party. You shouldn't have anything to do with politics. The man is a goddamn goblin. He is the epitome of everything that the Democratic Party said they are against. He's a kleptocrat, an open, unabashed kleptocrat. And you lost to him. You lost to him. You lost the reality shows. You gave the country over to a maniac. If the Democratic Party can't make an argument against Donald Trump, come on. Come on. If they can't make that argument, if they can't make that case to the American people that we are a better option than what Donald Trump is doing in that office, than the hard physical things. You can come up with this mythical person at one point when you're running, meaning Donald Trump. He has nothing to run on. He's some random guy who just says a bunch of stuff and he got elected. Because, let's be honest, it had more to do with the Democratic failing than Trump winning. He's in office. He's a kleptocrat. He worked to take health care from the people in this country. He worked to give that money in a tax cut to the millionaires who put him in that office. He attacked marijuana rights. He attacked the rights of transgender, meaning he's put segregation back into the military. He's attacking jobs. He's attacking jobs. And I'm saying he's attacking jobs because you're going to wreck the economy based on his economic policies. He ripped the modest band-aid that Obama put into in regards to Dodd-Frank. One policy after another gets ripped off. Yeah. If you can't make the argument that that guy, that you're better than that guy, then you shouldn't be in politics. You shouldn't be in politics. Democrats would be lost without Trump now. Democrats are lost because they're Democrats. If you can't tell somebody what you stand for, then you shouldn't call yourself a Democrat. You shouldn't call yourself anything. What do you stand for? What do you stand for? That's an honest question. That's a fair question that people ask when they're talking to Democrats. Because I am clueless of what the Democratic Party stands for. What I see is somebody there against Donald Trump. And the person who's there against Donald Trump, for the most part, can't distinguish themselves from the Republican Party enough for people to vote for him. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. That's absolutely embarrassing. This man is a goddamn maniac. This man wants to strip away each and every minor protection that was done under prior administration, or each of the minor progress, the incrementalism that was done in the prior administration. That's what he wants to do. The Democratic Party has screamed Russia at the top of their lungs. What about health care? What about allowing people to go to school without having $40,000 in debt? What about doing something so people will have money in their pocket, meaning a better, decent minimum wage, $15 an hour? What about a federal jobs guarantee? What about something big? What about something bold? What about saying that we're going to get rid of poverty in this particular country? We have 50% of the people in poverty in this country. That's a big, bold damn statement for a Democrat. And that will be the philosophical basis of what the Democratic Party was supposed to be. What about worker co-ops? What about strengthening unions? There are all these things that you could be talking about. There are all these policies that you could be pushing to move the country just incremental to the left. Just incremental to the left. Nobody's telling you to be a socialist. They're telling you to be the philosophical basis of your party and do things to represent your base. That's what they're telling you. That's what the people out there are telling you. That's why you lost this election. That's why you lost 1,000 legislative seats. That's why you lost the House, the state Senate, and the presidency. And for that matter, the Supreme Court. That's why you lost. That's precisely why you lost. Nobody knows who you are. And when you make these flowery rhetoric statements, I don't care about those statements. I don't care about your words. I want to know what you're saying. What are you for? What do you represent? That is the question. What do you represent? If you can't tell me what you represent, keep walking. Yeah, Rob, yeah, he did. You can check what took place. That brutal video, what? Yeah, Nixon also got impeached. Joan Lone. Remember when Nixon took out both president, VP in short order and got brand new president out of the blue, though? Yeah, that was Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford, if you remember, was hated after he pardoned Nixon. They hated his ass. They wanted Nixon to be in prison. Buster, I think Tim Canova's a shoo-in now that Deborah Wasserman-Schultz is part of the A1 investigation. We'll see. We will see. Yes. Rob, yes. Medicare for all, federal jobs guarantee, fully funded public education, yes. Yes. You're in the richest country on the planet. What is the life you're willing to settle for? What's the life you're willing to settle for? That's the life you're going to get. I'm not telling you no lie. The choice that you make in regards to what you're willing to settle for is the life that you're going to get. The United States is willing to settle for so little. And they cover and paper the stuff up over these ideas of you're in the best country on the planet. This is the #1 democracy. You're free. You're absolutely free to die without health care. You're free to die at $40,000 in debt from a school loan that follows you to your grave. You're free to be perfectly insecure in regards to your job, to not know when you're going to be fired willy-nilly. You're free to not have a union. You're free to not have a guarantee in regards to having a living wage. You're free. You're free. You're exceptional, not just free. That's what you're told. That papers over the reality of things that they have in other countries that make their lives more free. Trust me. Are you free as a person when you have access to healthcare? Meaning, anything happens to me, I can be a bum on the street and I still can get healthcare. Yes, that's freedom. That's something you don't have to worry about. That's something you don't have to worry about. Am I freer when I have the capacity to get an education when I want to get an education without having $40,000 in debt for having a temerity to try to get an education? Yes, that's freedom. That's freedom. Are you telling me that these other smaller countries that don't necessarily have the economic might of the United States can do it, but we can't? We can't spend $1 trillion killing people abroad and do those things in the country. But the idea that we choose killing people abroad as being more important than doing those things for the citizens in our country is pathetic and embarrassing. It just is. What's my thought on universal income? Holly Siegler says she's not sold as it would increase the price of everything else. Buster Peak. It depends on the amount. There's right and wrong. Say, for instance, if everybody gets in $200, let's say somebody says the resources of this particular country belong to the people of this country, meaning if you're getting oil, coal, whatever else out the ground in this particular country, you should give back to the people in this country. These are our resources. The government is giving our resources away for people to make profits on those resources. We, the people, should have some influence on those resources since those resources are common heritage. It's all of our land. There should be a kickback. If you're giving back $200 to each person in any particular country, it's just everybody, $200. That's not enough to live off. That's not going to be this huge amount of money where, people can just stop working and everything else. It would put people in money in people's pocket. It would take the edge off for some people who are barely making ends meet. No, you're not going to increase the size of goods on $200. Yes, people are going to have more money, but those people aren't going to be putting that money into the exact same thing. They're probably going to be buying food and everything else, things that they typically buy. It's not like they're completely splurging. I just disagree. No, Rob, I disagree. It depends on the amount. I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about the MMM thing. If a bunch of people get a bunch of money and a bunch of people are buying stuff and there's a shortage of those things and the price goes up because there's a shortage of those things, having $100 or $200 is not going to be enough to create shortages in the country. I just don't agree that the price of things are going to go up. No, Harley is sharp. She is. I just disagree. Automation. Yes, automation. Automation should be the #1 thing that we're talking about. In our society, in capitalistic society, automation has been used to bash workers. Meaning, you have a tool, a person does a particular job. You have a tool that's automated that does that job faster. Now, the company has a choice. The company can say, we're going to cut down the workday so these people don't have to work as long, and we're still producing the same amount. Or, I can fire that worker, I can get the same amount, and I can accrue profit to the top. Our model says, we're going to maximize profit. I'm going to fire that worker. I'm going to accrue profit to the top. He didn't have to do that. He did that because the model said you need to maximize your profit and make as much as you possibly can. I don't care about the social ills of firing that worker. So yes, we're going to have automated cars, and all those automated cars means all those taxi drivers in this country are fired. They didn't do anything wrong. The automated car itself is safer. It goes anywhere you want to go. You don't necessarily have to pay a driver. The driver isn't sick. The driver isn't late. The driver doesn't necessarily know how to get there. We have an automated car to do it. Those people have lost their jobs. That's not their fault. Automation should not necessarily be something that's a hazard in a society. It should be something that frees people up in that society. The problem is your society is structured around maximizing profit, which means that those automation in that sense is owned by somebody else. That person wants to make as much profit as they can get, meaning yes, they're going to fire those workers. They don't care about those workers. The goal in the society is to maximize profit, and that's what they take on as their goal. So that's what they do. There needs to be a reorganization of our society. Full stop. Automation and machines should be used to allow people freedom. It should be allowed to use people freedom. Do you understand that we're making things in a shitty way, knowing those things are going to fall apart? purely because we want to keep people working. Meaning, yes, your laptop is only going to last a year or two, because if I made your laptop to last 10 years, then we're going to lose workers. We have an economy that have people working just for the sake of working. They're not doing it because it's socially necessary labor. It's doing it purely because they need money in their pocket. They're doing things that's fucking up the ecology, wrecking the environment. They don't even recognize that the environment exists. So they would take something, boat something thousands of miles away to give to somebody, something that they could have grown in their local base, because they don't take the environmental damage into effect. It's just profit at that point. It's just an amazing thing. This is our society. It needs to be completely reorganized in the way we do things. If it crashes, that crash would allow for an opportunity for something different, but that crash would be heinous. The crash would be absolutely heinous. I love Mark Blythe. Yeah, I love Mark Blythe. The man is amazing. What's the other cat? Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff is absolutely amazing. I would love to have him on my show. Absolutely love to. Automation is a hunt for the perfect slave. It is. Because you understand, right? Most of the stuff boils down to who does the labor. That's the fundamental question. You were born with certain things. You were born with certain needs. The very fact that you were born with needs, meaning you didn't necessarily have everything that you had, meant that there needed to be labor in the process. Who does the work? Who does the work? If you had a tool or machine that can do that particular work that frees you up, then your life should be about life. Your life should not necessarily be about subordinating yourself to some service or some person or some industry or some job. It's like you're selling your talents to a plantation. Do you honestly believe that that's all you are? Some tool, some cog in a wheel. What are the things that you yourself want to do if you were left to your own devices to do them? Meaning, when you woke up in the morning and your needs were met, what would be the thing that you do? Where would you go? Who would you see? That's a life. That's a life. That's not what we have in this country or in this world. We have something different than that. I'm making the point that we should have a life. Automation is the goal to get that particular life where the machines can do most of the labor in our society. And we can get rid of this idea of cash and inequality and everything else. That's my point. And look, I don't think it's a perfect society. I don't think there's any such thing as utopia. I think societies grow and expand based upon the people who are in it. But if your goal is to get rid of crime, poverty, war, if that's your goal, you will never accomplish that goal in this model. The incentives are against you. If you're going to have any poverty, if you're going to have any inequality, then you're going to have some kind of conflict in your particular society, because somebody's not going to have something that they need to exist. Getting rid of those things means changing the model and the way to which we operate. Beyond that, the world doesn't change. The world doesn't change. Alright guys, I am going to leave it at that. It's 2 hours. I do think I'm going to do this every Wednesday. This is fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoy it. And look, and again, I have no beef with anybody. I have no feelings invested. No hard feelings at all. I would work with anybody at this point. So, and when I'm saying work with, I don't necessarily mean channel. I just mean work with. Interviews, talking, all that good stuff. I sent a message out to Zach Haller to see if I can get him on for next Tuesday. I think he hit me back. I didn't get a chance to respond to him on Facebook. So, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Thank you to Caitlin Johnson for coming on the show. She was a fucking awesome guest. I really like her. I hope she comes back on at some other time. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, thank you. I appreciate you guys being here. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, subscribe, and you can always support the work through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks guys.